Fitzwilliam Darcy pushed his spectacles up on his nose, for they were forever slipping. A more finely crafted pair might better remain in place, but could he afford those, he would need none, for he would be back at Pemberley with more activities at hand than going over his shop records by tallow light. At Pemberley he would read during the day, for pleasure, with bright sunlight streaming into finely furnished rooms, and if he wrote, there would be no need for cramped letters he could hardly make out, simply to save on watery ink and coarse paper. Finished with his records for the day, he snuffed out all the tallow candles but one, then took the last and made a check of the doors, front and back, though why anyone would want to rob a bookseller he didn't know. Returning to the counter at the front of the bookshop, he carefully trimmed down the now cooled wicks. Satisfied the shop was settled for the night, he took the cash-box and went up the back stairs to the room above, where he finished the watery ale and half-eaten pasty he'd procured earlier that day. Going to the other side of the room, he readied for bed, then extinguished the candle. By memory and feel he crossed back to his narrow cot and climbed beneath thin sheets. So far, November had been mild, but soon enough London would grow cold and cloaked in a smoky miasma, and Darcy would shiver in his sleep. Perhaps if he went to his cousin Richard, but no, he wouldn't put Richard in the position of being at odds with the patriarchs. Darcy sought rest, his mind on books and ledgers and the price of tallow. It did not help that he had sold only a single volume today, most of which had been spent dusting to keep the shop in good order and to give him something to do. Nor was tomorrow likely to be much different, although soon patrons would trickle in, seeking gifts to take back to their country estates for the Yuletide. December would be a better month. It always had been in the past.
She would put any of their happiness above the deed of wedding their odious, sycophantic cousin. She simply would not let Jane be wasted on such a dreadful man, or go to his home in Kent, to endure this Sir Lewis and Mr. Berg he nattered on about. They sounded even worse than he was, a supposition reinforced by Sir Lewis's willingness to give Mr. Collins a living. Once she and Jane were far from the house, walking the narrow line of green between forest and field, Elizabeth announced, "I have written to our aunt, and requested she remove you to London immediately. As I sent the letter yesterday, I have every hope Uncle Gardner's carriage could arrive as soon as tomorrow. My wording was that strong." Jane cast her a startled glance. "You have written to Aunt Gardner, and asked her to invite me to visit?" "I have." "Oh, but why? It is improper to be so demanding, and you did not even ask if I wished to go. It's nearly December. Will I return from this visit you have orchestrated in time to celebrate Christmas with our family? It is my intention that you remain in London until the danger posed by Mr. Collins is past." Jane shook her head, her lovely features pulled downward in confusion. "What danger posed by Mr. Collins?" Elizabeth halted, bringing Jane up short, and turned to her. "Oh, Jane, can you not see it? He means to propose to you." Her eyes went wide, and a hand flew to her cheek, which paled. "He does? How do you know?" "Because he's been on and on about how Sir Lewis and Mr. Berg do not agree with entailing inheritance away from females, and that the obvious solution is for one of us to wed him, so that we are not perforce cast out when Papa dies."